Everyone has a story to tell. Welcome to DingoTalk, where we explore the experiences that make us who we are. Here's your host, Carlo Guadagnino.
What's going on, Chuckleheads? I am Carlo Guadagnino. This is DingoTalk. My guest this week is the head football coach at Western New England University, Coach Jason Lebeau. Before we get into Coach's story, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Western New England. It's located in Springfield, Mass. There's 2,433 students. They have an acceptance rate of 88%. They have a grad rate of 66%. The cost before aid is $62,000. The cost after aid is roughly $28,000. Their top three majors are sports and fitness, admin and management, psychology, and mechanical engineering. And again, for those of you watching that are looking maybe to go to Western New England next year, make sure you talk to your guidance counselor, talk to your coaches that are recruiting you, talk to the coaches you're playing for currently. Go on their website, wne.edu, get all the information that you need, and maybe fill out their application if that's where you decide to go. Moving on to Coach Lebeau's story. He's going to tell us about his time as a student at Western New England and his work throughout being a coach there, now being the head coach of Western New England. So, without further ado, this is Coach Lebeau. What's going on, Chuckleheads? I am Carlo Guadagnino. This is Dingo Talk. My guest this week is the head football coach at Western New England University, Coach Jason Lebeau. Coach, thank you for joining us.
Hey, thank you for having me. Really excited to be here.
Absolutely, Coach. We're going to do this the same way we do every week. I'm going to throw you in a time machine. We're going to talk a little bit about how you ended up at Western New England, and we're going to work our way to today. So my question for you is, to start, how do we find ourselves at Western New England in 2006?
Yeah, so I grew up here in Western Massachusetts, went to Belchertown High School, small high school, had some success, multi-sport, athlete in Camden in high school. Wasn't really sure, what I wanted to do. But I knew I wanted to stay in sports. So that kind of directed me, throughout the recruiting process and looking at schools that had sports related majors, not necessarily saying I knew I wanted to coach at that time, but just knew I wanted to stay in sports, maybe athletic director, maybe pro sports. I don't know, 17, 18 years old, not having any idea what I wanted to do. Thought I wanted to go really far away from home. Had some injuries and things in high school. Actually had a pretty significant injury my senior year. Didn't actually play a lot, only played in a couple games. Recruiting process shrunk really fast. And my best opportunity was actually in my backyard, only about 30 minutes away. Keith Emery had just taken over here. He'd been the head coach for 1 year, restarting the program here. Good school academically, had a great a lot of people had a lot of great things to say about the school, but football program did not have a lot of success. Keith was actually the first full-time head football coach here. So,
Wow.
The school was just putting resources and things into football. I liked that, could stay home, close to home coming off of that injury. I actually wasn't sure if I was going to have some complications and things from it. Had a sport management major. So it just kind of ended up checking all the boxes, and I ended up going to school right down the street.
Now, at what point during your 4 years, because you had a pretty good 4 years, at what point do you start thinking about what's the next step? Because obviously with the major, you were already, I want to stay in sports, this is where I want to go. At what point does it become like, oh, I think I might want to coach?
Yeah. So my father had always coached youth football, youth sports. So I think coaching in general was always something that was probably going to be in my background. It wasn't until a little bit later in my college career that I did realize this could actually be a career in a profession. I don't think I had known or really realized that. Coming from where I was coming from, I finally had a couple college coaches that kind of talked to me about that. I kind of had a knack for it with young guys in my position group. Going into senior year, I still didn't know what I wanted to do. I started kind of talking to people about that. Didn't have a lot of resume experience at that time. So actually helping out in athletics and specifically with the program was going to be my best bet to kind of build with the resume. Mm-hmm. And, I ended up, connecting and getting started right after my season, working with the team, and actually kind of Kind of a cool story is Western New England had just hired a new offensive coordinator in Corey Heatherman, who is now the defensive coordinator at the University of Minnesota. He had just started here, and like that was kind of my introduction to college coaching with him. I just kind of worked with him all spring, running the off-season program, helping with recruiting, really just everything. And that's what made me realize that I really did want to do this as a profession and a gig. And I really wanted to keep working with Corey, and he ended up going on and bigger and better things pretty fast, but it was a really cool kind of start to the career.
Now, you said that you started to help out some of the guys, especially that senior year. And then once you were done as a player, would you say that there was any difficulty from the transition from being guy with shoulder pads on that can joke around in the locker room and is one of the brothers, and then now you're kind of changing roles and exchanging the pads for the clipboard and the whistle? Was that difficult at all, or?
I think generally that is difficult. That is challenging. I had people around me that told me I did, kind of did it more seamless than others. I think you just got to build trust that you're doing it for the right reasons, and you're trying to provide ways for them to be better. And even if there were guys that were playing with you, and I did a lot of that already as a player, so it kind of meshed well. I started with the running backs right away. I wanted to work with a different position group. So I had to kind of earn that trust. I think you got to earn that. I don't think you can just say, all of a sudden I got to whistle, listen to everything I got to say. Like, I don't think it really works that way. And we have consistently, since I've been here, had guys that have made that transition, and some guys better than others, but it's something you gotta work at, and you definitely have to change and adapt. You gotta change the words that you use. You can't speak the same way the players speak. There's there's got to be a change in that. That's one of the first things. Can't dress always the way that they dress, and those type of things, and kind of make that separation. But as long as they know you care about them and you're doing it for the right reasons, they're all in for it, man. They just want to be coached and want to be mentored and worked with, and we got really good kids here. That helps too. I think, they trust that we're, bringing the right coaches and the people that actually make sense to work with them.
Now, Coach, 6 years post-graduation, you finish that secondary graduation from college, you get the master's degree. Was that because the next logical step is, I want to keep coaching? Most coaching positions, it's master's required or master's preferred. And why the choice to get the master's?
Great question. So for me, like when I was talking to my family, I think when you get into coaching, you need some family support. And, one of the things that my father and family said, like, hey, you're not going to make a lot of money, but if you can get a college, a master's degree or another degree out of this, it can really make it worth it. So basically right away, I think my first year I didn't take classes. I was kind of just all in on whether the profession was going to be it. Second year was when I started started the process. The thing that was unique for me is I got promoted to full-time offensive coordinator after that second year. And so I was like swimming, trying to do classes. I was doing one class at a time, but the goal was to always have a degree. If I was going to get into coaching, let's make sure I've got the best graduate degree. Maybe, I don't want to say fallback, because I didn't really live it like that, but let's all be educated to the best of our ability. So I got a master's in business administration. And it ended up kind of taking a full 6 years by the time, or almost 6 years, by the time I was actually done with it. So that's kind of how that kind of shaked out.
Now, what's it like 2 years out of the gate, going from a position coach to then being the guy that's running the entire offense?
Yeah, I mean, looking back, I had no idea what I was doing, right? I mean, like, you look back now, I think it was, a lot of the story, I get asked a lot, like, how am I still at the same school? How did this all happen? It was so much timing. Like, it was right before the seat. We had just, had a lot of success the year before. We won our first conference championship as a school. Like a lot of things were going well. Our offensive coordinator at the time, a week before the season, got a job in the NESCAC and was gone. And we wanted to continue to run the offense we were running. I was the logical guy there, and I'm very fortunate that Keith Emery, who was my coach, like had a lot of faith and trust in me, and we were rolling and trying to figure it out. There was definitely a lot of bumps along the way. The players were great. I remember it to this day. Just the excitement level they had for me. I'll never forget that, which was really cool because they went from an experienced coordinator to an inexperienced one, and there were some ups and downs. Along the way, the first 2 years we kind of struggled. We were always scoring points and doing well, but there was things I definitely could have did better. I learned and grew in the role. And I'm still getting better now, so it was just kind of a unique situation. Obviously being at your alma mater, there's some comfort to that helped, just knowing the resources and the people I had, to help me while I was here.
Right. Now, let's fast forward 6 years from being a coordinator, then you become the head coach. And the first question I want to talk about is that interview process. Are there football questions, or are we just how are we going to be community? What's our grade point average? How are we going to retain students, et cetera? What's the interview process like coming from somebody that's already in the school? So you're getting kind of a head start on the interview process.
Yeah. Well, again, right place, right time, and just people trusting and, respecting me. And, there wasn't much of that, to be completely honest. Coach Emery and his family were making a move. They knew it was going to be likely happening. So there was time. It was the off season. Keith really wanted to keep it in the family and keep it here and keep it going in the positive way. So obviously he really wanted it to just be able to go to me. And then when we met with, basically people here on campus, including the president at the time, everybody was immediately on board and immediately meeting with me on how they, almost like, instead of me trying to sell myself, they were almost, selling it to me. So it was just like a very different situation. There was never a question on me or my character or my plan. I think they were hoping that things were going to stay, somewhat steady in what we were doing and trusting and knowing I was so involved in how we were doing things already. I was going to have some ups and downs. No one knows how to be a head coach until they're doing it, but just a lot of faith and trust. So a couple conversations more just about life and stuff. And then all of a sudden we were up and rolling in 2018. So, and I'm not really answering your question because it didn't really happen that way.
Now, we'll follow up to that. What's the biggest difference? So what's the difference between, you're obviously when you're a position coach, you're just coaching that specific position. Then when you become the coordinator, you're kind of overseeing the one side of the ball. What's that next step like? What is the day-to-day of a head coach?
Yeah. And again, I was fortunate. I did a lot, even when I was a coordinator, as far as like, small D3 programs, we do it all. We don't have a ton of resources. We don't have staff for every single thing. As an offensive coordinator, I was the equipment coordinator, recruiting coordinator. Like I was involved in all of those things. I think the biggest things when you step completely back, you don't even realize how many other meetings and other things and other conversations and other emails and other things you got to do. Obviously the big things that stand out is, the budgetarily, that's a big thing for our level. Fundraising, I did a little bit. I was lucky I had all these experiences. But those things are really big. I think, as far as like teaching leadership and more life skills, that's probably the biggest. Like, I go from planning installs as an offensive coordinator to now planning, hey, what's our leadership install in preseason? Because I do it the same way, What are we going to talk about tonight? What are we going to talk about day 2? What are the big life skills things that we're going to hit on in preseason or whatever. So it's similar stuff. It's just going to be seeing it from the outside. But on top of that, how do I help my offensive coordinator? How do I help my defensive coordinator? I coach the offensive line here. Nothing has to change there. So it's just kind of deeper layers that are packed on. So, but it's ultimately the people business, right? And you're just trying to. Now you got 120 plus that you're building relationships and connections with, not just your 60 maybe that were on offense. I think that's what really tells you the story.
Right. Now, Coach, for those that aren't familiar, tell us a little bit about Western New England University. For those, the last time I was up at a school in Massachusetts, it was about 2000, spring of 2009. It was Becker College, and they're not even there anymore. So,
sure. Sure. And our defense coordinator was the last head coach there. So now Western New England, a small private school here in Springfield, Massachusetts.
Mhm.
We are, basically a national university on a smaller scale. We have a little bit of everything academically. We're a math and science school, which makes us unique because we have engineering. We have, some of the health sciences, pharmacy, occupational therapy, but all the way through the business school down to, criminal justice, communications, all of those things. So
Mhm.
we have a broad-based curriculum here. So what's cool about our roster is there's all different types of majors that guys are studying here, all different, maybe even academic profiles and things, which makes us unique than a lot of other schools here in this area. Um, We've got a really beautiful campus. While we're in Springfield, we're not in the city. So Springfield is a larger city, one of the largest cities in Massachusetts, but we're tucked on the outside of town. So we have 215 acres here, pretty wide open, traditional New England style. You think of brick buildings, foliage, that type of stuff. When you think of New England campuses, we fit that mold. Just a nice little place that has really good people. You learn in a small classroom environment. And if you look across the board, we've been pretty strong in athletics for a small private school, really in multiple sports for quite some time now.
Now, Coach, what are we looking for when we're bringing a guy to Western New England? Like, obviously, the part of that question doesn't have to be answered. Is obviously, guy got to be able to play ball. But what else
Yeah.
are we looking for when you're recruiting? And what are you telling parents for the next 4 years? I got your kid. I got your son.
Yeah.
We're going to take him to the next level. How does that conversation go?
Yeah, great question. I mean, we're all about people and relationships. So we're looking for really good people, and then people that want to build relationships with others. I think when you're evaluating human beings at our level, you're obviously talking to coaches and getting some background on who this student athlete is. But like for us, like, is the guy, really good, positive energy? Does he make a room better? Are people excited to be around him? And is someone that wants to work really hard to be the best version of themselves that they can be? Like, who's willing to give the best version of them? And it's got to be something that's important to them. If they want to be a great student athlete, like this is a good place for that, academically and athletically. So those are type of traits, things that we're looking for. And then it meshes with like what I'm going to sit down and tell parents is like college is all about the growth process. You're going to have ups and downs. You're going to learn. You're going to grow. I think, why do you go to a small private school, live on your own, go to small class size, get a lot of support, people that care about you, people that look out for, people that know you, know who you are, where you're from. And you can just grow in that environment every day. You're going to be pushed. You're going to be, held accountable, but you're also going to be cared about. I think that's something that we really try to stress here. I mean, I got our first team meeting tonight at camp, and that's all we're going to talk about is like our focus of camp is just building relationships with each other. The football stuff will come. So I think it's really about the evaluation of the human being. And like you said, obviously they got to be good at football and they got to fit into those things, but are they going to care about others? Can they communicate? Those type of things are going to be even more important.
And what's the recruitment like for you guys? Because I mean, that's a pretty vast area that you have to cover.
Yeah.
And so talk to us a little bit about that. What's the general area? And then obviously, like you said, you're a national school, so you're also
Yeah.
looking across the board.
Yeah, it's unique, and then like I mentioned, the academic profile. I mean, we need 3.7 engineers if you want engineering, and then we can go much lower than that depending on what program you're going in. So academic profile doesn't shrink, major doesn't necessarily shrink. We can only cross guys off for a couple different majors. I think pre-COVID, I always talk pre-post-COVID. Like pre-COVID, we were going a lot further away. We had, we were getting international guys throughout the country, specifically for engineering, sport management, some of those type of programs. We've seen a national trend that people are staying a little bit closer. We're really centrally located where Springfield is. I mean, you can get to Albany in 40 minutes, get to Boston in under 2, Hartford in a half hour. Like, so that covers a big range. New York City's not a bad drive. We get a lot of Long Island kids. So like it's very interesting and challenging because it's good and bad. We're going to have a lot of guys to recruit. We're going to have to spend a lot of time. We got to go to a lot of places. We got to talk to a lot of coaches. That pool does not shrink fast. It starts big, and we've got to be able to manage that and get to know a lot of people. Like I meet individually with every single kid and family that comes and visits with us, and so that takes a lot of time. But if you look at our roster, Connecticut's been really, really strong for us. There's not as many private Division III football programs there,
Right.
so most of the guys in that state are looking to leave to go play somewhere. Massachusetts is super competitive. Tons of schools in this area. Uh, Albany, we can do pretty well in. Long Island, they got to leave. So everybody's recruiting, for those guys and competing. So it's a pretty big land mass. I mean, we've got to spend a lot of time. But like I said, I think most of it is close. I think we're starting to see, hey, COVID's, in our rearview mirror, I hope,
Right.
can we start getting guys from further away, which we have a couple. We got a Georgia kid, we got a Maryland kid. We've got a couple right now. I think it's something that honestly we might be able to do more of in the future.
Now, Coach, before we jump into talking about the upcoming season, let's recap 2023 real quick. 8-3
Yeah.
overall, 4-1 in the conference, a New England Bowl win over UMass Dartmouth. The only 3 losses coming at against Springfield, against Endicott, and against Susquehanna. What was the overall takeaway once the dust settled for the season for you? And how did the spring look, and how are we going into camp today?
We felt we had a good team. I mean, if anybody watched us, we had a good team last year. Guys were really, really good. Our seniors did a great job leading us. We lost to 3 teams in really tight games, and all 3, won their conference and went to the national playoffs. So it's one of those feelings like, hey, that's a pretty good year. We just got to get it a little bit better to get over the hump if we want to beat, national caliber teams. But I don't think we were far off. So we were, especially coming off the year before, we had a younger team. So it was a good, solid season. Winning in the postseason at any time is a great accomplishment in college. Not many teams can say that when the dust settles after a season, that they're finishing the year with a win in the postseason. Right. So we got to take that and run with it. And then we're a lot older team with experience now coming back here in 24. So our whole thing is, yeah, sure, a lot good stuff, but not satisfied, really hungry. How can we do things a little bit better? Because we lost by a little bit. All of those games were basically 1-score games. Box score wise, might look different, a late touchdown here or there, but they're basically 1-score games, and we can do it. We're right there.
Now, 2024, and the first thing I want to ask you, as a head coach, is it difficult to have to schedule 5 non-conference games? Because I've talked to some people that week 1, pretty easy. Week 2, pretty easy. Once you get to week 3 and down, it becomes kind of who has space in the schedule. Are there long-term agreements for the group that you have here?
So it's super hard, very, very challenging. There's only a few leagues, right. Right away who's got out of conference in week 4 and week 5, right? 3 there's a little bit more leagues out there that, they may only have 7 league games, so you can still get a 3. But 4 and 5, man, I mean, that's been tough, for a little while now. I mean, and for us, we've tried to always challenge ourselves as a program. We want to get outside the region, play those type of caliber teams. So we've had for the last probably 5, all the time I've been the head coach, we've had a really hard schedule. Playing, Susquehanna just made sense, similar type schools. Leagues open that week. They need a conference. That's just a 2-year, because our league is now going to change. We're going to get back to 7 conference games here after this season. And then when you get into 5, really just the ECFC league, was really what's open. So at that time, we called the conference champs of that league, and got into agreement with them at that time. So that was so that's this will be our last year with them too, on a 2-year. So okay. We'll get back to a little bit more of a balance. Look, we play Springfield every single year. We were playing Westfield every single year. So those were kind of easy. Like you mentioned, week 1, week 2, Westfield and the MASCAC, there's been some changes and different things there. So now we're playing Salve, who's got a really good football team. And then, we've got St. Lawrence for one more. That was a 4-year. So that was a little bit of a longer agreement with those guys.
Now, how far in advance do you have, so that the 4 years started that would have been your second year in, And then the
Yeah.
rest of those have been 2 year, and then the Springfield game is an always.
Yeah. And
Okay.
most of that's been because of the changes in conference. So as soon as change in conference, you're ahead of it. But some of it all happens fast. You want to be, it's 3, 4, 5 years out. But New England's made it challenging with the changes of conferences and leagues. And I should say the Northeast in general, with just some of the changes. So I don't think I would say most people have been struggling to schedule that far out. We're hoping to get back to a spot here once, things kind of settle down a little bit with everybody figuring out what leagues, hopefully long term. I mean, I don't know if that'll actually be true, if things will continue to change, but I think we're going to be in a better spot, starting next season.
Well, and big change came a couple weeks ago. I believe maybe it was last week. The name change, right? You guys are now the Conference of New England.
Yeah.
So there's a couple other changes that are coming up here in 2024 that I want to talk to you about. Mainly, there's two big topics I've been talking to all the coaches about: expansion and the cameras on the sideline. So my first question is, we were long overdue for the expansion of the playoffs, I would say, based on number of schools and who was getting to go and how many AQs there are. So how do you guys feel about the expansion? Is that the right number, or is that where we should sit?
Yeah, so I've been fortunate to be on some national committees and involved in a few things. This has been a discussion for really as long as I can remember that I was involved in those things. I don't know if is it the right? No, I think it makes sense right now. Yeah. I think it's good. Is it the final? I don't know. I mean, I think no matter what you see it, even with the highest levels, no matter what number you come to, there's going to be teams that are left out, and you're always going to wish there was more, or somebody got snubbed. So it's always hard. And I think there's a lot of questions on how this whole index is going to work, and how people score, where people are going to fall. So I think there's still questions, but I think it's better.
Right.
I think, here in New England, and you talk about our conference, like just to feel like, hey, there's an ability, out in that large to make this thing where forever that wasn't even really an honest thing. Like if you were saying you really thought you could, you really could. So that's exciting. I think we feel good about the expansion in general. I just think we've got to see how it plays out.
And then the other side of that, 18 iPads, up to 18 iPads. I make that mistake. 18 iPads on the sideline, but as we talked about earlier in the segment, most D3 schools, you wear multiple hats. I don't imagine you're hiring 18 guys to run around with camera angles and editing and whatnot. But the iPads being brought to the sideline, good. Does it lead to, are we going to start seeing replay? I know there's certain conferences that are already talking this year they're going to use it. Where do you guys stand? And as a conference, are you guys going to utilize the iPads?
Yeah, I mean, where I feel is, and our conference, we have no restrictions, whatever school can handle and is going to try to do. And most of all our conference schools are going to give it a go, and do it to the best of our ability. Generally, where I stand is I am pro technology, pro innovation. I think we should absolutely go in that direction. I think the interesting part is, small schools and smaller budgets. How does this all fit in? It's a lot of that is getting challenging for some schools, including us, from a staffing and, cool, I could get all these tablets, but, I don't have that many coaches or that many, resources to really do a good job at it, but we're going to give it a go. And, we feel pretty good about our plan. It's way less than 18, but we are going to give it a go. We're excited about it. I do think it will lead to more technology and instant replay. All of that's coming down the pipe. Again, I think it's almost a story of the haves and the have-nots, like who can keep up and, have that kind of technology at their games. And then you might see a different quality, at different school. Is my instant replay just an iPad, or is my instant replay on big TVs or the big screen, the jumbo, like, and we play out of our region and go play some really good schools. So we see that anyway. And it's just part of the Division III landscape. I think that's one of the more interesting things about, Division III is, you see all different types of resources, staffing, quality of a lot of different things. And that's just part of what we've had at our level for forever.
And Coach, our last question before we get to what I'm now calling the 2-minute drill. So you're the first one that's going to go through the 2-minute drill. But
Oh
the
boy.
last question is, what is the significance of Division III when you're talking? I know I've seen a couple things, especially this summer. I've seen, glorified intramurals. It's, you're kind of, you're not really playing you're not playing college football. You're playing it's an intramural sport, and it's not. I mean, we both know that. But
Yeah.
what's the significance of Division III when you're talking about giving opportunities to athletes to continue that?
Yeah, I mean, what we talk about with our guys, or we talk to recruits, or we talk to families. The thing is like our guys care just as much. They are all in on being a student athlete, being a college football player, just as much as any other level.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest difference that you see is, if it's winter break, if it's summer break, or anything like that, it is break, and our guys get to go have jobs, go have internships, go be able to do other things. But the rest of the year, man, they're just as committed as anybody else. Like this is really important to them.
Right.
And academics are clearly number one and all of that, but this is their development as a human being, and the growth process, as I mentioned before, is a big part of why they're at this school and why they're doing this, and also why people are going to want to hire them. And once they get in front of employers, like people are going to be like, I really want this guy, like that, and that has a big piece of this whole thing. But they're in the weight room, they're doing everything that everybody else. But in the summer, they're working jobs, internships, all that kind of stuff. Winter break, same thing, and they're getting ready for careers. And what's cool now too at our level is, if you're a good enough football player, you can keep going. You see it every year. So, and you'll find out, you'll know, other people will know. So that could be a piece of this whole thing. It can't be priority number one, I don't think, just from my own philosophy, but it could be.
Right. All right, Coach. It's the 2-minute drill. If you could live anywhere in the world, where would it be and why?
Wow. If I could live anywhere in the world. That is a great question. So I do really enjoy traveling, been able to go around the world a little bit. One place I haven't gone, which is scary to say I would live there. I love Asian food. That's
Okay.
like me and my wife. That's our big thing if we're ever gonna go out or do it. So it would probably be somewhere where we can have the best access to that we possibly could. That would be my why. Somewhere quiet with good food.
Mm-hmm. All right. What's the most important lesson that you've learned over your career so far?
In my coaching career?
Yes.
Be where your feet are, be all in on what you're doing. I've seen people that were my age, and I got in. One of the reasons I like the idea of getting into coaching was to travel and go to all other schools and do a lot of other things and travel the country and coach on a lot of different coaching staffs. And my journey's been very unique, where I've been here the whole time. And I think when I was told early, like, just be all in, it led to promotions and things where now I'm in a position that is sought after, and that is a good position and a good role. And luckily enough, I knew that and was taught that early. Otherwise, I maybe would have missed out on those chances.
If you weren't coaching, what would you be doing?
Probably teaching, probably a teacher. My father's an engineer, and I'm a pretty good math guy. I did calculus and stuff in college. I think if I made that decision early enough to be an engineer, that would have been a really, a very, good decision. It just depends when I would have made that choice. As I've grown, I'm a pretty good, I like to, as coaches, we're teachers. But if I had made that decision early enough and, saw how much money they were making right out of college, it might have been engineering.
What's the best compliment you've ever received?
Best compliment. Respectful. I think we talk about respect, with our guys all the time. I tell our kids all the time when we get told that on campus about the dining hall or any facility, that's the best thing our team can be told, and how we talk to others. And, I think that's the best thing you can be described as.
other side of compliments, what's the best insult you've ever received? Worst insult.
Best.
I don't know how we do that. And we're still working out the verbiage on that. Is it the best insult?
Best
Is it
insult.
the worst insult?
Best insult. I don't know. My wife says I gotta have more empathy, so I gotta be a little bit more empathetic. That's what, I gotta do a better job at that. She's not wrong.
And then where did you meet your wife?
Right after college, we were working together, basically just trying to figure out what we were doing from after college to the next stage in life. And she had gone to Westfield State right here in Western Mass as well. She's from the other part of the state, and right after college, and we've been together ever since.
And then the last question I ask everybody, was there a question you were expecting me to ask you? And if so, how would you have answered it?
Well, I think anytime I'm talking to people, it usually has to do with, being at one school. Why have you looked to leave or go to other places? And I think I've kind of hit on it, and it's all full circle about being where your feet is. We got great student athletes here. I grew up in Western Mass. My family is close by. I got two little ones. My mom has my son often. All the support. My family come all out to games. Like, it's become like such a great family thing for me. So it kind of brought the whole coaching journey, in full circle in a lot of ways. I'm still, I just turned 36, I never, you don't know the future, but I'll tell you what, this has been a really good situation for me and my family.
Coach, I want to say thank you first off for taking some time before you go talk to the boys. Make sure you tell the boys from us hello, and we're going to be watching this year. Best of luck this season. For those of you that are sticking around, you know what comes next. It's overtime with Serenity Brown. This has been Coach Jason Lebeau, the head football coach at Western New England University, and we'll be right back.
What's going on, Chuckleheads? Welcome to Overtime. Been a while. I am Carla Guadagnino, Serenity Brown. She's the one running the show.
I don't run nothing.
If you didn't edit, there would be no show. Thus, you run the show.
Well,
all right.
Put it like that.
We have some clerical things to get out of the way. First off, if you haven't yet, please check out our DingoTalk Top 25. It's out on all of our social medias. It was a fun process. You want to walk them through real quick how we came to what we did?
So, how do I explain it? Wow. You sent out polls to everybody, obviously. As they sent in their list, each ranking number got a certain number of points. So, number 1 spot was 25 points. 25th spot was 1 point. You get the gist of that, so on and so forth in between. And then it was just a matter of taking the time and tallying it all up.
And the reason I bring that up is we're not, for this week's picks, obviously we're back. That's what we're back for. We got 10 games. For this week's picks, we used the top 25 from D3.com. It's the one that everybody recognizes. It's just the easier way to say who is what for the time being. Hopefully one day people care about our rankings as well. The other big announcement is we are going to 3 football games this year. We're going to be traveling to Mount Union on September 21st for the last of the Mount Union John Carroll games. The following month on the 19th of October, we'll be going to W&J versus Grove City. That game's in W&J. And then the November game, we're still waiting. We have a couple feelers out there to see, but we are planning on getting to 3 games. Now, with that all being said, let's get to what we're here for. We're going to do things a little differently this year. The team that we're covering from this week, the coach that we interview, they'll be the first game that we talk about. If we don't have a coach, you're just going to see the 2 of us, and we'll do this. So, that being said, game 1. Western New England University at Springfield. 2.1 miles separate these 2 schools. 5 minutes total.
Wow.
Last year, Springfield won 28-14. Western New England had gone into the half, leading that game, but then Springfield really stifled them on defense, shutting them down to a shutout in the second half. How did you pick this game?
Do you want me to be truthful? Springfield was a name I recognized.
I was really just asking for who you picked. Maybe I should have said that differently.
Oh.
But that's a good. Thank you for explaining your thought process. DB also picked Springfield. I once again staying with the way I was last year. I'm picking the guest this week. I am picking Western New England. They both picked Springfield. So that'll be a game that could determine some early on rankings. Yeah. Next up, we have Lebanon Valley versus Franklin and Marshall. It's the 44th meeting between the two. 10 straight years of this being the opening contest for both of them. Franklin and Marshall won last year's meeting 16-12. Again, the Dutchman went in at half with the lead. Big third quarter, pushed the Diplomats over the top. You picked LBC.
Yeah.
DB picked Franklin and Marshall. but we going with LVC. That's who we're picking. So that's another game.
Camera view.
We're picking LVC, friend of the show. So that's two, and that's two right off the bat where there's some differences. Big.
Yeah.
Next one up is LaGrange at ETBU. Coach Wes Dodson's looking for his first win at LaGrange. ETBU brings in a strong defense that limited opponents when they visited ETBU to 1.9 yards per rush. It means the big hog mauls up front for LaGrange are really going to be having to work. You went different than the rest, so you picked
LaGrange.
DB and I picked ETBU. That game, again, it's the first time. I think that's the first time we've done this, where the first three games of the picks are offsetting and different.
Yeah, different.
So game 4 is the Union at Utica. Coach Darch changing programs now at Union. Last year, looking to avenge last year's 7-point loss to Utica, 31-24. Strong first half for Union. Strong first half for Union, and then Utica took it over in the second half. So, you picked.
Union.
I picked.
Union.
DB picked.
Union.
To my Utica friends out there, it's nothing against you. It's just I think Union has it this year. Moving on to Game 5. Two weeks ago's guest, Coach Pat Ruley and Rowan, are going to Stevenson. They look to start kind of getting the ball rolling on the new generation there. Lost to Stevenson a year ago, 20-17. So I imagine Coach Ruley, defensive-minded guy, he's coming in looking to not lose by 3 points like that. That sits with you for 365 days. You and DB picked
Stevenson.
And I picked Rowan because I defense wins championships, and this guy pretty good at what he does with the defenses. So, moving on, our first ranked contest that we're going to talk about is Hardin-Simmons at Howard Payne. And it's interesting, Hardin-Simmons brings back 131 people to their roster. Now, just for put that in perspective, there's another one down in here that we're going to talk about. They're bringing back 25. So Hardin-Simmons has a lot of experience coming back. Last year, it was a 40-33 win for Hardin-Simmons, and a 20-point third quarter is really the difference in that game. So I think all three of us picked Hardin-Simmons. And for good reason. It's the ranked team over the unranked team. There's a lot of unknown going into this first week. So there's that. Next up is number 25, Barry, who's traveling to Montgomery, Alabama to face USA South preseason favorite, Huntington Hawks. Last year, the Vikings really took it to the Hawks, 67-34. And when you look over the box score and you read kind of how the game played out, it was Barry's game from start to finish. It was just a complete win for them. Now, you got to remember, Coach Turk, he's been around a little bit. He ain't going to take too kindly to that, especially with them coming home, being the season opener and the home opener. But all three of us, we took the Barry Vikings. Next up, number 8 Hopkins travels to number 20, Ithaca. Hopkins won last year's meeting, 27-17. And remember, I gave you that little foreshadowing. Ithaca returned 70 from last year's team, 25 of which contributed in some sort. Big difference there between bringing 70 back and 131. Yeah. Ithaca and Hopkins are both expected to win their respective leagues. Hopkins, the Centennial, Ithaca, the Liberty League. I fully expect that these two teams are going to be right in the mix now with this 40-team playoff that we're going to get. These two teams will factor in. In fact, I think Ithaca might be the team this year, the little surprise. Another New York team that's going to run the table and surprise some people. Again, very early to make those types of predictions, but when you're bringing people back, it makes those wheels in my head turn a little bit. So I believe we all picked the same. We did not pick Ithaca. We picked Johns Hopkins. And again, that's just Hopkins is the year in and year out their perennial power. So is Ithaca. But I think right now, preseason, you're looking at what Hopkins does. Game number 9 that we picked, Wisconsin Whitewater welcomes John Carroll to Wisconsin. Number 3, Wisconsin Whitewater. Number 19, John Carroll. The Warhawks won last year's meeting 27-23. I guarantee you there's some bulletin board material there in the sense that, John Carroll's on their last year in the OAC, so they're going to want to make a strong out-of-conference statement before you get into conference play. And if you're Wisconsin Whitewater, you're a little perturbed that for the 3rd year in a row you're not picked to win the SEC of Division III, which is the WEAC. Lacrosse gets the nod. Whitewater expected to be number 2, but somehow in the national rankings, Wisconsin Whitewater up. And so, but the last 2 years, Lacrosse has won.
Yeah.
Last year, Lacrosse wins against Whitewater in very dramatic fashion. Sorry to John Carroll, it's UWW.
Yeah.
We're going with the Warhawks. And then our game of the week this week is number 7 Alma and number 17 UW River Falls. Which just off of that, you should realize there's 3 teams from the Wisconsin Conference. There's a reason that we think that they're the best conference in the country, because it pretty much shows. The interesting thing about this game is Alma's a team that everybody really expects. If Carter St. John stays healthy, they were in a game with Cortland. Carter St. John gets hurt, and some other things go against Alma, and they find themselves on the way out. But how do we pick it?
So,
DB took River Falls.
yeah, I'm sorry. I have a
It's
bag
blocked.
in my way
It's
of
blocked.
our board.
You and I took Alma.
Yeah.
And the reason we took Alma, one, is because
Can we get it?
how can you beat that slogan? How can you beat it? And then also, nothing to do with why we picked them, but because we want to point it out once again. If you have not yet, make sure Carter St. John started QBs v Cancer. Make sure if you can and are able, you donate. Get yourself a t-shirt. Get yourself donate so that you can support a quarterback who's going to train younger kids. And all the proceeds go to, obviously, cancer research. So, with that being said, I think, you got
I
anything?
think that's it.
It's going to be an exciting week. Football's back. I know I love it. I know she hates it. So, we're going to
Hate's a
have,
strong
we're hate's a strong word. She's not looking forward to football being on for the next 180 days, 200 days. It's the best time of the year. Do you agree with us? Do you disagree with us? Who should we put on next week's board? I want to say thank you to Coach Lebeau in Western New England for taking the time out during camp to come talk with us. And I got nothing else. You got anything else? You're good?
Good.
You sure?
Pretty sure.
All right. Pretty sure doesn't sound like you're sure.
97%. You gotta always leave a little percentage.
We'll see you next week, Chuckleheads.
Thanks for checking out this episode of Dingo Talk. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe. For more info and to contact the show, you can find us on Twitter @DingoTalk.